This is the second part of a series of videos called The History of the Stock Market, where I'll be talking about historical events in the context of the Dow Jones Industrial Average. So in my previous video, I talked about the years 1900 to 1920. This video focuses on the next two decades, 1920 to 1940. Before we get started, I just want to mention I pulled these charts from stockcharts.com. It's a great online resource, a lot of free charts on there. Highly recommend you check it out. I'm not getting paid by them or anything, so just a recommendation. I think it's good to acknowledge that I am pulling the material from there. Anyhow, let's get started by looking at the beginning of 1920s. And actually, you could see that there's a fairly substantial dip in the stock market. This was due to post-war inflation. We had just finished World War I. Things were getting very, very expensive, and all of a sudden, people started saving more. They decided we don't want to spend as much. Things are getting too expensive too fast, and consumption went down. And as you can see, the stock market bottomed here at 63.90 in 1921. Then all of a sudden, we had a remarkable run up, actually the greatest speculative boom up to that point, as you can see by this chart. This was called the Roaring Twenties. And it was a time in American history where a lot of people borrowed money to invest in the stock market. They used financial leverage. A lot of industries were growing at rapid rates, but the growth was amplified, or at least it seemed amplified as a result of this leverage. People also went to college a little bit more. They tried to become more cultured. They read books. They traveled more. And as a result, consumption in general went up over this period of time. The stock market grew exponentially. It went from 63.90 to a high of 381.17 in just an 8-year time period. This high actually occurred in 1929, right before the stock market crash. And as you can see, at this point, the market was clearly absurdly overvalued. There's no way that the United States economy could justify this kind of growth. So there was a major correction, and that was the crash of 1929. There was a couple of days called Black Monday and Black Tuesday, which happened in October of 1929, where the stock market dropped about 25% in 2 days. Huge drop, and it continued to fall for some time. The interesting thing about this period, this 2.5 years where the stock market dropped precipitously from 381 to about 41, about an 89% drop actually, is there were a couple of peaks and valleys here. You had several runs up, and so they were false runs, and then the market just kept going down and down and down and down until finally in 1932 it bottomed out. This was the start of the Great Depression, and that was obviously a significant economic event, and has had a lasting impact on policy and on the way that our country is shaped. It was basically an extended recession, a recession that lasted almost 10 years. The economy continued to contract. And the interesting thing is that the stock market actually started going up after just 2.5 years, but the recession, the Great Depression, continued to last for a significant period beyond that. So as you can see here, we had another run up actually as the New Deal and other programs started to kick in a little bit. We had a run up, and we actually jumped all the way back up to 194.40. This happened around 1937. And then we had another dip, and this is why it was called a double dip recession. This was the crash of 1937 and 1938, which was also a severe crash. It was obviously small, as you can see, compared to the initial crash, but it was still quite significant. And the reasons for this were because of war concerns with the rise of Nazi Germany, and also and general banking scandals as well that occurred around this period of time. However, once the United States got involved in World War II, there were a lot of jobs that were created, and consumption started growing again. And this was kind of how we pulled out of the recession, was a lot of spending due to World War II. Now, I'm not saying that this is definitely the reason we got out of the recession, but most people will concur that massive government spending on World War II at the time did create a number of jobs. And was certainly a driving point in pulling us out. So, as you can see, this 20-year period was probably one of the worst 20-year periods for stocks. We started out, we really didn't grow too much, as you can see here in 1920, and at the end, around 1940, there was very, very little growth, maybe just 20 or 30 points, really, in the Dow over a 20-year period. So, and this was obviously due to this massive collapse and the subsequent Great Depression. So in my next video, I'm going to be talking about the next 2 decades, from 1940 to 1960, World War II, and some of the events that occurred after that. Thank you very much for watching, and for similar videos in this series and other series, I recommend you check out my website, www.kanjo.com.